and welcome back to our show, A Can of Bookworms. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Victoria.
And we are two fellow bookworms who share a passion for fantasy, young adult, and other fiction genres.
So we're going to do deep dives into new reads and favorites alike. So if you guys don't like spoilers, this might not be the place for you because we're going to leave no stone unturned when it comes to these books. So if you don't like spoilers, then sorry, but it's time for you
to go. There's the door. And we'll be doing one book a month, and we aim to upload every Monday.
Every Monday. We do take a couple week break in between books just so we can re-up ourselves, but other than that, we stay on track with our Monday, at least when we're in our series. So this week we're going to be doing Cinder by Marissa Meyer. So I love this book. This has been one of my favorite books for a really long time. I probably read it over 10 years ago, but I love it. It has a special place in my heart for sure. Marissa Meyer is a great author. She has, I think, 3 series, and she's coming out with a Christmas book this year. So if you guys want to go read her Christmas book, go for it. But I love this book. And so, yeah, let's get started. And so I was going to ask you, Sarah, so let's say, don't want this to ever happen, but let's say you get into a tragic accident.
Oh, gosh.
And, you're going to die, right? For sure. But they give you the option. But, if you're dying, I guess they probably wouldn't give you the option. But, let's say they gave your loved one an option. Yeah. To turn you into a cyborg or die. Which would you rather have?
Becoming a cyborg sounds pretty cool, but for you to ask me that's that dire between dying or becoming a cyborg, it makes me kind of hesitate. Would life as a cyborg be that bad?
I guess it depends on your perspective.
More hesitation.
I guess it depends on your perspective because once you become a cyborg, at least in the new Beijing and the new world that the book is in, you are not treated very well. So they don't really like cyborgs. They see them as almost lab freaks, that shouldn't.
I thought you were they see them as how women get treated.
No. They see them as lab objects, basically they shouldn't really exist, so they're not really a part of society because they shouldn't be there anyways.
So we're back to lessons of chemistry with how women get treated in the 1960s.
I was reading it and I was wow, and they're actually considered property as well.
Oh my
god. So
gosh.
yeah, I was reading it and I was wow, I'm just kind of doing the same kind of thing. But
so you're asking me, would I rather die or be a woman in the 1960s?
I don't know. I think being a cyborg would be really cool. Mm-hmm. But Cinder, she doesn't really have that kind of experience. So this book takes place 126 years after World War IV. Mm-hmm. So much of the world was decimated by bombs and nuclear warfare and stuff like that. So they've kind of had to rebuild. But Cinder lives in New Beijing. Her name is Lynn Cinder. And she works in a mechanic shop.
And she's a cyborg, right?
And she's a cyborg, yes. But she tries to keep that under wraps as much as possible because of people's discrimination against cyborgs. Mm-hmm. She doesn't really
like Mulan going to war.
Yeah.
Nobody can know that she's a woman.
Yeah, sure. No one knows that she's a cyborg. A lot of people do know, but she tries to keep it under wraps as much as possible because they do get discriminated against, and she does own her own business. She owns her own mechanic shop, and she's actually known as one of the best mechanics in New Beijing.
It makes sense since she's a cyborg. Is it easy for her to hide, though?
Well, so she actually doesn't look like a cyborg, except for the fact that she has a metal hand and a metal leg.
So pretty easy to conceal.
Yeah, so she actually wears gloves all the time just to make herself more comfortable so that nobody sees her as a cyborg. But this morning, she was actually working on removing her foot because her droid, Aiko, was going into town and getting her a new foot. Mm-hmm. So she just got done removing, and she's sitting under the table, and she's trying to get her foot off because it's been on her leg for so long. It's been on her leg since she was 11 years old, and she is now, I believe, 17 or 18. I can't remember exactly. But she's had the same foot on since she was 11. So it's 3 sizes too small, and she hates it. So her droid is going to bring her a new one, so she gets really excited, and she gets all ready, and she starts unscrewing her leg, and she finally gets it off, and it, like, thunks down to the ground, and then all of a sudden, she hears, like, this loud bang noise, and she looks up, and somebody just, like, put a droid down at her station, and she gets up, and she's kind of annoyed. She's like, what the heck? Like, who just slammed this droid down? And then she looks up, and she looks at the person who put the droid down on her table, and he has, like, a hooded sweatshirt over his head. But then when she meets his eyes, she recognizes him. He has these, like, coppery brown eyes and this long black hair that swooshes into his face.
So he's handsome.
He's very handsome. And he's actually Prince Kai, the heir to the throne of New Beijing. Yeah, and so New Beijing is also kind of like the superpower of the world at this time. New Beijing is, like, where it's at. So he's kind of like the emperor. He's the emperor's son. And so, and Cinder, even though she knows who he is, she actually has a control panel in her head where she's actually hooked up to the internet, like, all the time. And so, like, it basically, like, flashes over her head, like, Prince Kai and all the information about him and how old he is and all that stuff. So she looks up, and it's Prince Kai, and he's like, hello, how are you? And she's like, hello? He's like, I'm looking for Lynn Cinder. And she's like, well, I'm Lynn Cinder. And he's like, well, are you sure you're Lynn Cinder? You look a little young. I'm looking for a mechanic. Yeah, that's me. I'm the mechanic. Oh, okay. Well, I was expecting somebody a little bit older. And she's like, no, it's me. And so he puts the android down on the table, and she's like, why do you need your android? Why can't the royal guards fix it? Or the royal mechanics. Yeah. And he's like, well, they did try and fix it, but they were not able to fix it. He said he can't turn it on. He hasn't been able to turn it on. And she can tell by looking at it, that's actually a pretty old model of android. And so she's looking it over, and she's like, well, but it looks in pristine condition, of course, because it's the prince's android. But it looks brand new. She could just tell it's an older model. And he's like, yeah, I just need it. And he's like, well, Cinder said, well, maybe it's time to upgrade to a new model. And he's like, well, it's very sentimental to me. It was my first android. He's like, and it contains top secret information. And Cinder just looks at him, and she, like, stops doing it. And she's like, he's like, I'm just kidding. It's just sentimental. And then, but when he said that, Cinder got a little orange light in the corner of her vision. So Cinder actually has a lie detector programmed into her. So she knows that he's lying as soon as he says it. So there is something
about the kidding part, right?
Yeah, about the kidding part. So there is something fishy about this android that he's just not mentioning.
Why would he go to her, though, especially as royalty? Like, why wouldn't they just fetch someone?
Right, you would think that they would send, like, the royal vizier or something to go to
it. Like, the crown prince himself?
I think that Prince Kai likes to break the rules, and I think
he's a rebel. Okay,
yeah.
We like bad boys.
I think he's just a rebel, and he likes to do stuff that he's not supposed to do. But he is implanted with a microchip, so they actually know where he is at all times.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
how we microchip our pets, they microchip the royal.
Yeah, everyone's microchipped.
Everyone?
Everyone.
Every single person?
Every
like,
single
even
person. Yeah, even Cinder has a microchip.
Oh.
It's actually how you do your transactions. It's how, it's like you don't need a driver's license, you don't need cars. I mean, they're actually talking about doing this now, so I wouldn't be surprised in 20 years if we all have microchips. I don't think I want one, but whatever. Because I think they can obviously track you through it, and, like, they know exactly where you are at all times, and, yeah, I don't know how I would feel about that, but everybody in New Beijing has microchips. Actually, everybody in the world has microchips.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Cinder starts getting to work on this android, and she like bangs it on the head, and it almost falls off the table, and she goes to catch it, and he's like, and he just looks at her like she's like, and then she tries to push the button to see if it'll turn on, and she's like, you'd be surprised how much often that works. And Prince Kai's just looking at her like,
honestly, that's like how IT is like today. They're like, okay, did you turn it off and turn it back on?
yeah.
Like, did you smack it a couple times? Did you unplug it? It's like, yes, I did all of the.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, yeah. And he's definitely skeptical of her at this point. But he's, like, talking to her about it. He's like, do you require payment up front? And she's like, no, it would be my honor to fix this for you. So she's not going to charge him, which I think is crazy because if a prince walked into my thing, I would expect him.
Right? This is premium prices now.
Yeah, I'd be like, actually, don't look at those prices on the wall. That's not
Those are outdated.
Yeah, don't even look at those. And if you remember, so Cinder just took off her foot, and she doesn't actually have her foot on.
Did she forget about that?
She didn't forget. So she actually bowed when he first came in, and she almost fell out of her chair. So she sat down. She sat back down, and she's just been working on it at her office. And then all of a sudden, she hears a voice, and they're like, Cinder! Cinder! And then she looks up, and it's Aiko, her android. And she's coming with this brand new foot for Cinder.
What does her android look like? Just so I have, like, a visual. Is it, like, R2-D2?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more of, like, an R2-D2 model. They have, like, treads and everything. And they explain that they're,
like Wall-E?
Yeah,
Okay.
like that. So they're, like, a few feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think they'd be more like Eva because they say that they're more, like, sleek and, like, fancy looking.
Mm-hmm.
And they have androids of all kinds. They even have, like, escort androids.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the excuse that Cinder uses when Aiko comes with her foot. Because Aiko's like, Cinder, I got your foot. I got them down to 600 units. It's a perfect model and it'll fit you perfectly. And Cinder immediately, like, looks up and she's panicked because she doesn't want her to be exposed as an android to the prince. So the prince looks up and then she's like, Aiko, thank you. Mr. Nugent is going to love his new foot for his escort droid. And she's like, what? I don't compute. What do you mean? He's like, hello, Aiko, say hello to our guest, the Imperial Highness. And she looks up, she's like, Emperor Kai, you're even more handsome than I imagined. Oh. And then Kai looks up and he's like, wow, that's a personality you don't see every day. Did you program her yourself? No, actually, she came like that. That's why my stepsister got her at such a good discount.
Real quick, because I know you said that some cyborgs are treated like property. Is it more so, like, do people not like or treat cyborgs poorly because of stereotypes, or is it more like legally where they have less rights?
Legally, they have less rights. So they can't, it's almost like slaves, and they could be free. And it's the same with cyborgs. So cyborgs, they could technically release them to be free, but they have to sign the release forms. So Cinder is an owned android. So all of her profits and everything that she makes is sent to her stepmother because she's owned by her stepmother. She's considered her ward, is what they call it. So she's owned by Audrey is her name. Yeah, okay. She owns her.
She has a stepmother and a stepsister. And looking at the cover, I'm assuming this is Cinderella inspired.
Yeah, it is. It's a Cinderella inspired book, but she's an android, so it just takes a little bit of a twist on it, and it doesn't really have, I mean, I guess it does have all of the core, like, Cinderella values. It just has a little bit of extra stuff in there. As
a little
well.
spice.
Yeah, I mean, there's all of the, like, she has the evil stepmother, she has the stepsisters, she falls in love with the prince, there's a ball, like, you know, all that stuff, but there's just a little bit more that goes into it than Cinderella, for sure.
Cool.
And so her and Kai are talking, and Kai asks her if she can have it done by the ceremony. So there's a big festival. There's a big festival coming up. So he wants it. It's actually the lunar festival. So
that's fun.
Yeah. I think they actually
like festivals.
Yeah, I think they actually do celebrate it in
real life.
Yeah, they celebrate it in real life. Yeah. So he wants it done by the time of the festival, and she said she can't make any promises because she doesn't know what's wrong with it, and she's gonna have to run diagnostics, but she's pretty sure she can have it done by that time.
How far is the festival?
It's only a week away. And then
he's not even paying anything, and he's giving her deadlines.
I know, right? And then Cinder asked him, well, how can I get a hold of you? And he's like, well, you could just calm the palace. And then he's like, well, are you here next weekend? And Aiko perks up. She's like, yes, we're here every market day. And so he's like, well, I'll just come and bring it. And she's like, no, you don't have to do that. And then Aiko goes, that would be lovely. So he's going to be there next week. And then he takes off and he puts his hood back over his face and just, like, walks back into the crowd and disappears.
He just pulls the drawstring, so just, like, a little.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who is it from South Park that does that? Kenny?
Kenny?
Is it like Kenny?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
And then Cinder, so when Aiko showed up with her new foot and she was embarrassed, she actually just, like, threw it to the wayside and it was, like, sitting behind her. So she goes to pick it up and inspect it to make sure that nothing happened to it. And she clears it off and then Aiko goes, isn't it perfect just like you wanted? And she's like, yes, Aiko, it is just like I wanted. And all of the mechanics actually fit her mechanics as well. So she doesn't have to rewire it or do anything. She can just put it right on.
Wow.
So she gets it all ready and she attaches everything and it feels phenomenal compared to her
like a
old
dream.
foot. Yeah, it fits like a dream and she's so happy about it.
So she just had like a little like baby foot on
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah, she basically had the baby foot on for years because her owner, I guess, her stepmother, didn't want to pay for her to get another one.
What about her hand?
Her hand?
Did she just have like a baby hand?
I don't know. They don't say that her hand is... I think her foot was bothering her more than her hand was.
Okay.
And I think also because she keeps her hands gloved all the time, I don't think she was bothered as much by her smaller hand.
Yeah.
And also I feel like from 11, I don't know, I don't have kids. I don't really be around kids. I know your feet do, but like, does your hand really grow that much? I mean, like, I feel like my hand did not. I feel like my hand's probably been the same. Maybe a little bit bigger. I have very small hands.
Yeah, you also wear like children's size shoes. So honestly, I think you would be the best to judge. Did your hand size change from 11 to?
I don't remember. I know my shoe size did a little bit, but I feel like my shoe size has been the same for an extremely long time as well. But anyways, so Cinder puts on her new foot and she's really excited about it. And then all of a sudden, across the square, she hears screaming out of nowhere. And she looks up and it's this huge ruckus and everybody's running around, everybody's screaming, she doesn't know what's going on. And she looks, because she's a cyborg, she can see really far away, and she looks at the bakers across the street.
She's built-in LASIK eye surgery.
Yeah. Her name is Chang Sasha, and she zooms in and she sees Chang Sasha. She's starting to get little bumps all over her, and then somebody is yelling out. They said, "It's the plague! She has the plague!" And everybody starts screaming and running around, and Cinder is watching as her son tries to run up to her, and the mom's like, no, don't come up to me. And then another shopkeeper grabs the boy and runs out of the market. And Cinder, even though she knows what's going on, she starts getting those computing going on in her head, and it starts saying all the statistics of the disease. And there's a plague going on. It's called leishmaniasis. And it starts with these black splotches, almost like bruises, all over your skin, and it's really contagious. So everybody's running and screaming because they think they're going to get contagious. And there's no cure for it, and it's been going on for the past, 12 years. And it's killed over 100,000 people. Yeah. So it's kind of like the plague that they used to have, where, they just kind of get sicker and sicker until they die. They start coughing, and then they just get really weak, and then they die fairly quickly. The leishmaniasis disease actually progresses so fast. They're usually dead within, 72 hours.
What?
Yeah.
That's so sad. So what's going to happen to her?
So,
To the bakery owner.
Cinder is watching, and she stays in her booth, and everybody's running around, and it's almost like those shops, where you go down and everybody has their own little shop place,
Like a farmer's market?
Yeah, not like a farmer's market, but it's almost like everybody has their own booth. Remember when we went in Japan, we went to that market that was in front of that shrine, and everybody had their own little booths? Yeah, the Buddha shrine. Yeah, it's like that. So it's everybody has their own little metal door, and they can lift and close the metal door, and they each have their own little booths.
So it's not just a tent. It's more structured.
Yeah, it's more structured. It's like a building with a bunch of different shops in it. And then Sorcha's, she was actually a baker.
Like a mall?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just
But an outdoor one. They call it a market.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the visual. I need the visual.
But so everyone's running around, and then Cinder, she realizes very quickly that she cannot take Aiko with her out of there, so she's actually going to have to wait it out because Aiko would get squished because Aiko can't go that fast and Aiko's so much smaller. With all the commotion, she would probably get squished. So she yanks on her wire on her door and she slams her door shut, and her and Aiko just wait there until it calms down. And she puts a rag over her face and she's breathing through the rag, and she can hear the ambulance come to pick her up. And then she waits until she can't hear anything anymore, and then she cracks open the door and she sees 3 like people in like hazmat suits. They're pouring liquid all over her marketplace, and they're gonna set her stand on fire. Yeah, because of the plague. Because they're scared of it spreading. So they're going to set it on fire. Yeah.
Can Cinder still get it even though she's a cyborg?
So,
I mean, I'm assuming so with how she's...
cyborgs can get it.
Okay.
Yeah. Cyborgs can get infected with the disease. Yeah. They actually do testing on cyborgs. They do a cyborg draft. So, they do a cyborg draft because they say that cyborgs shouldn't be here anyways because they have second chance at life, and without their cybernetic enhancements, they wouldn't be alive, that they should be tested on. So they do a cyborg draft, and every day they call a different cyborg name, and they bring them in. And they also take volunteers as well. You can volunteer yourself for the draft, or your owner can volunteer you for the draft.
Your owner can?
Yeah. So you can be volunteered against your will. And if they call you on the draft, there's nothing you can do about it. You have to go. And they call one person every single day.
Every day?
Yeah. And they infect them. They use them for plague research. So they infect them with the plague and like try and find, and then they try like different vaccines on them.
So it's like a death sentence.
Essentially, yeah. Nobody lives from the plague because the plague, like they have no idea like what the origin is, where it came from, how to cure it, how it gets spread. Even they know very little about it. Even though it's been going on for 12 years, they know a very small amount about the plague.
Scary.
Yeah. So Cinder, she waits in her shop until they set the place ablaze because she wants them to be distracted while she leaves because she doesn't want to get taken to the quarantines herself. And because if you've been in contact with somebody who's infected, they will also take you in and hold you under quarantine. So she gets scared. And so her and Aiko sneak out the back and they leave. So Cinder makes her way home across town, and she lives in these Phoenix apartments that are like downtown, and she has to scan her chip to get into the building.
Microchip? Mm-hmm.
Yep, she has to scan her microchip to get into the building. It's her key to get in. So she goes in, and she goes up to her apartment, and her apartment door is open, and she's confused so she checks the number to see if it's her apartment, and she walks in, and there's a seamstress there making dresses for her 2 stepsisters.
Oh.
Yeah, so they're making dresses for her 2 stepsisters, and she walks in, and nobody acknowledges her. And they're all arguing, and her stepsister, Audrey, she has a stepsister, Audrey, and then she has 2 sisters. One named Peony and one named Pearl.
Peony is an awful, awful name.
Really? I think it's cute.
Peony.
It's a flower.
I know it's a flower, but do you know how I feel like that child is just, with a name like that, they're just going to be teased. Everyone's going to call her Pee-Pee or Pea.
I mean, I guess, but I don't think so. I think it's cute. I like it. I think it's super cute. I really like it. But I guess you're right. I mean, I guess it is an ugly name if you think about it. I think it's cute though. But so Peony and Pearl are making dresses, and she comes in, and Audrey is just barking orders at the seamstress, and she's like, I need Peony's neckline to be lower, and I need Pearl's waistline pulled in. And she can already tell that like Pearl's like literally sucking in her gut, and they're just like pulling it in. She's like, we need it to be smaller. And she's like, do you want her to dance at the ball? She's like, she's getting this dress for a husband. I need results out of this dress.
A husband? Waistline snatch.
Yeah. A husband, but she's only a child. Pearl perks up. She's like, I'm 17 and a half. And she's like, 17 and a half, exactly. She's a child. And
Wait, how old is Cinder?
Cinder is the same age. So she's about the same age as her sister.
So Pearl is Peony the same age as Pearl?
No, Peony is younger. I don't know how. She's 16, I believe.
So Pearl and Cinder are the same age, and then Peony is younger.
Yeah.
A little bit younger.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Cinder might be a little bit younger than her, but she is around 17 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're getting their dresses made, and her mom is trying to get them to get the dresses to be so they can look their best at the ball because she's trying to find them husbands. And
Do you like the name Petunia?
Petunia?
Yeah. That's a flower.
Yeah, I do like the name Petunia. I think it's cute.
Maybe just Harry Potter has just traumatized me for pea flower names.
Why? Who's got the
Aunt Petunia?
Aunt Petunia?
The awful aunt that raised him?
I guess, but I still like the name though. Who else has a P name?
Well, that's...
I thought you were talking about
Well, now there's Petunia, Peony.
There's no petunias in here. It's just Peony and Pearl.
Sorry, I'm really stuck up on awful name. Please don't name your future children that name.
I don't think I'll name a child that, but like I could see me naming a cat that.
I think it'd be cute for a cat.
I could name my cat Peony. I think that would be
What
cute.
would you nickname them? Pee-pee?
Probably like Mimi or something like that. Peony. I don't know. Who knows?
See, what do you think about it? There's it's just not a good name.
Well, I was gonna name Severus Poseidon, but I was thinking of the nicknames, and I'm like, I don't think so.
You could have called him Sid.
Sidian?
That point, might as well just named him Obsidian.
That's
the
true.
gemstone.
That would be cute.
That would be actually.
That would be a really cute cat name. Like a black cat?
Oh yes.
Next cat. Anyways, so she comes home, and Cinder, she goes in, she's like, hey, I'll get ready, and I'll come for my dress fitting right now. And Audrey goes, you're dress fitting? She's like, did you fix the hover like I asked you to? No, I didn't fix the hover because I need money to buy a new mag belt. It's going to be at least 900 units. She's like, well, maybe you should sell some of your things for it then. We could sell Ico, that busted android.
Ico.
No one's going to want Ico. And she's like, no, we can't sell Ico. Nobody will want her. She's broken. She's like, well, we could sell her for spare parts.
And for Ico?
Yeah. And so Cinder asked her, so if I fix the hover, can I go to the ball with you guys? Because they're all getting ready to go to the ball because the festival also has a ball. Mm-hmm. So they're all getting ready and getting dresses for the ball. And Audrey wants to find them all husbands. But she tells Cinder, she said, yes, if you fix the hover, you can go to the ball. But you have to go find a new bag belt for the hover. So Cinder gets all excited. She thinks she's going to go to the ball.
What's the hover? Is that
It's their car. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So it's a hovercraft. But they call it a hover. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I want a flying car. Harry Potter again.
Pearl does not want her to go. So she perks up and she's like, that thing is going to go with us? What are you talking about? And then they just ignore her. And then all of a sudden, a comm comes through on the net screen. So in New Beijing, everybody has these big net screens in their homes. And they're basically going through, like, daily news updates.
Are they like TVs? Or?
They're like TVs, but they're, like, always going. Okay. And they're everywhere. So they're, like, all along the plazas. They're in everybody's houses. Like, if you go to the store, they'll have one. Like, they're literally everywhere. Like, it's just, like, it's almost like Tokyo or like New York, like how they have all those giant screens. They have all of those, but they just basically have like news and like updates on them like all the time. So it's like different net screens. And I think they have different channels and stuff, so it is like television, but it's more like everywhere. Like you always have a net screen that you can turn to and get up-to-date information on everything. And so a net screen comes by, and they look up, and Aiko said, Prince Kai! So Prince Kai is actually doing a press conference, and the press conference is about the leishmaniasis disease. So the press conference, they turn it up, and he says, Research continues to be our top priority. Our research team is determined to find a vaccine for this disease that has now taken one of my parents and threatens to take the other, as well as tens and thousands of our citizens. The circumstances are made even more desperate in the face of the outbreak that occurred today within the city limits. No longer can we claim the disease is regulated to the poor rural communities of our country. Leishmaniasis threatens us all, and we will find a way to stop it. Only then can we begin to rebuild our economy and return the Eastern Commonwealth to once prosperous state. And then the screen turns black. And
So you're saying that the emperor
has
it?
the leishmaniasis. Yeah. He has the leishmaniasis disease. They also call it the blue fever as well. But the emperor has it, and his mom passed from it as well.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So his dad contracted it. I think within the past, 24 hours he had it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the screen goes black, and it's a reporter just by herself. And she says, "We interrupt His Imperial Highness press conference with an update on the status of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Riken. The Emperor's physicians have just informed us that His Majesty has entered into the third stage of leishmaniasis. We are told that everything is being done to ensure His Imperial Highness comfort at this time, and palace officials tell us that researchers are working nonstop in their research to find a vaccine. Volunteers are still urgently needed for antidote testing. Even as the Cyborg draft continues, there has been much controversy regarding the 126th annual Peace Festival due to the Emperor's illness. But Prince Kaido has told the press that the festival will continue as scheduled and that he hopes it will bring some joy in this otherwise tragic time." And then she ends it with, "Long live the Emperor."
He's in the third stages of it already?
And I think there's only 4 stages of the disease. So he's nearing
So he's
the
about
end.
to die.
Yeah. And Cinder is kicking herself because she forgot to offer the prince her condolences when she saw him, but she forgot about the state of his father because she was in such shock.
She did give him free services. I mean, I know it's not the same as condolences, but it's not like she, robbed him of his money, premium prices.
Yeah.
Like, you're already doing him a solid. Just say.
Yeah. And then that's when they go into the Cyborg draft and they talk about the Cyborg draft, and Pearl perks up and she's like, "Well, I know a cyborg that can be volunteered as tribute for plague research."
Can Pearl do that?
No, only her mom can do it. And Cinder shoots back. She's like, "Yeah, well, then you can get a job and pay for your own dress." Because the money that they use to pay all of their bills comes from Cinder's mechanic shop. Audrey does not have a job. And Cinder, she's never worked a day in her life. And
I mean, goals, but...
Cinder does all of the work for them, and all of the money that Cinder makes at the mechanic shop gets deposited directly into Audrey's account. And she doesn't see any of it. So that money that she used to buy the foot, she had stashed away for months, years, to buy that foot for herself. Because Audrey won't let her spend money on herself.
Makes sense why she had a child's foot for multiple years.
Yeah. Yeah, they pretty
She
much...
didn't have the money for a new foot.
Yeah. And that's why, even though Cinder believes that they would volunteer her for plague research, she knows that they need her income so much that they would never volunteer her for plague research.
It sucks that she has to be the breadwinner, but that's the only thing saving her from them volunteering her is...
I know.
She's their sole income.
She's their sole breadwinner. I know, isn't that crazy? Ugh. So Cinder leaves and she goes down to her. She has a little shop downstairs in the basement. Mm-hmm. It's like a storage unit, but they let her use it to work on her mechanic. Mm-hmm. So she goes down there to work on some of her projects that she has going, and she's sitting down there with Aiko, and Aiko gets all excited. "You're going to the ball! Aren't you excited?" And she's like, "No, Aiko, I'm not going to the ball." And she's like, "Can you imagine it? There's going to be dresses and food, and you can dance with the prince."
So positive. It's so cute, but so heartbreaking.
Yeah. She's like, "You can dance with the prince." Why would the prince ever dance with me? I'm fixing his android. It's not like we're friends or anything.
Yet.
And then Cinder starts thinking to himself, well, maybe he would be nice to me because he knows me and he was nice to me at the market today. Maybe he would dance with me out of politeness. So she even starts getting a little excited about it. And then Aiko's like, we could buy you a new dress, we can get you some new gloves, we can get you some new shoes. And she's like, I don't have money for any of those things. I used all of my life savings on this new foot that I just got today. She's like, well, we could go to the new vintage dress shop. I've always wanted to go in there. Because Aiko, even though she's a cyborg, she loves, like, everything pretty. And she's very into, like, culture, like, fashion.
She's a little fashionista.
Yeah, she's a little fashionista. And she's just, like, she's obsessed with, like, makeup and shoes and outfits and food even though she can't taste food. Like,
Same girl.
Yeah.
I mean, I can taste food, but, yeah.
Foodie. Yeah.
Love food.
I do love food. Yeah, she was like, that's the first thing she said when they were burning down Sorcha's baking shop. She's like, all those sticky buns. But neither of them had ever eaten there because Sorcha was actually discriminated. She discriminates against cyborgs. She doesn't serve cyborgs at her bakery shop.
She was kind of a crappy person.
I don't think she deserves to die from limosis, but yeah, she was kind of a crappy person. So I was like, when I was reading it, I was like, well, that sucks.
I feel kind of bad because it was like, ooh, like that sucks that you got that sickness, but it's like you weren't a good person either. I mean, everything happens for a reason, but then I feel bad for thinking that. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now.
And then Cinder reveals to Aiko that the reason she knows that they're not gonna go to the ball is because she saw that little orange light when Audrey told her that could be able to go to the ball if she fixed the hover. So she told Aiko that she knows that Audrey's just going to come up with more and more things for her to do so that she can't go to the ball. She's like, once I fix the hover, she's just going to ask me to fix something else. She'll ask me to fix her old garden android. She doesn't even have a garden anymore. She doesn't even have a balcony to have gardening stuff on. I know, Aiko, but that's not the point. The point is, she's never going to let me go to the ball. And then she starts getting all of her stuff ready. She's like, okay, we're going to go down to the junkyard and we're going to find a new mag belt. Well, what's the point of getting a new mag belt if you know you're not going to be able to go to the ball? Well, because even though I'll never be able to go to the ball, I do think she means it when she says she'll sell you off for spare parts just because she needs the money. So we got to go to the junkyard and get a mag belt. And then Peony comes in. She comes tramping down into her shop, and she's wearing her dress. She's wearing her brand new dress, and it's silvery, and it has like little hints of lavender in it, and it shimmers in the light, and it's so beautiful. And even though Cinder loves Peony, she can't help to be a little jealous of her, how beautiful she is. And she also has curves as a 14-year-old girl that Cinder could never have, because when they turned her into a cyborg, she has no figure. She just has a stick straight figure. Because they put so much into her. And I also think they stunted her growth a little bit too when they did all of those things by putting all of her cyborg. Yeah, so she never developed feminine traits. Yeah. So she's also jealous of Peony for that. Mm-hmm. And Peony comes running down. Mom is driving me loony. I can't stand her. She just keeps talking about how nobody appreciates her and her daughters are such a drain. Yap, yap, yap. I can't stand her. And then she comes down and she goes to lean on something. She's like, Peony, your dress. She's like, whatever. And she doesn't even care. And literally like gathering up dust on the floor. And she's like, if you ruin that dress, Audrey is really going to have something to be upset about. And she comes down and she sees that they're getting all ready to go. And she's like, where are you going? We're going to the junkyard. Aiko chimes in. She's like, yeah, it's going to be smelly and gross. And then Cinder turns to her. You don't even have scent receptors or taste buds. She's like, but I have a very vivid imagination. And then Peony's like, I don't care. I just want to get out of here. Anything to get me out of this stuffy apartment. So she turns to Cinder, and Cinder's like, okay, you can come, but you have to change out of that
I was
dress.
saying that dress?
You have to change out of that dress, and you have to be quick, because I have a story to tell you. So they go to the junkyard, and that's when Cinder tells her that she met Emperor Kai. Because all she's been thinking about since she met Emperor Kai is telling Peony all about it, because Peony is his #1 fan. She's on all of his fan web pages online, and she's been obsessed with
fangirling.
Yeah. She's been obsessed with Prince Kai for years. So she tells her, and she's like, I can't believe you didn't call me. Why didn't you tell me? I would have been right there. She's like, what was I supposed to do? You were getting a dress. You were getting fitted in silk. What was I supposed to do? She's like, you should have called me. I would have been there. Why wasn't I there?
Woe is me.
Yeah. And then she's like, well, he has to come back for it when it's done, right? She's like, yes, he does. Well, then I'll be there for that. And she's like, what? And then Aiko chimes in. She's like, well, he is going to be there next Saturday. And she's like, I'm coming. I'm going to be there. And then she starts talking about the ball. And she's like, maybe Prince Kai will dance with me at the ball. And she's been hearing all sorts of rumors about how Prince Kai is looking for a wife at the ball. And Cinder's like, don't listen to those tabloids. They're going to rot your brain. She's like, no, everyone is talking about it. Everyone's saying it. It has to be true. It's better than all the other rumors that they're talking about. What rumors? That he's going to marry Queen Lavana from Lunar. She's like, what? That would never happen. Don't even say that out loud. And so Queen Lavana is a Lunar. So a Lunar is like, so I'm assuming it happened around, this is my assumption, around World War IV. A bunch of like rich people left the planet to save themselves and relocated on to a different planet.
Okay.
And they have been, I think it's the moon, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's the moon. So they relocated onto the moon, and they developed supernatural powers.
I mean, heck, I'd want to go just for that. Even if I'm not rich. I mean, I'm not.
I don't think they knew that they were going to develop supernatural powers, but they did end up developing supernatural powers. So basically, because of evolution, they just evolved into different creatures. So even though they were originally human, they're not anymore. So they actually can control people with their minds.
What?
Yeah, they have special powers.
Get me on that moon.
And they can manipulate people's minds.
Ship me up there.
They can manipulate people's minds, but Queen Lavana is like a dictator. So she runs the planet, and like she's a dictator over everyone. Cinder goes into it. So she said, Lunars were a society that evolved from an Earth and Moon colony centuries ago, but they weren't human anymore. People said Lunars could alter a person's brain, make you see things you shouldn't see, feel things you shouldn't feel, and do things you didn't want to do. Their unnatural power had made them a greedy and violent race, and Queen Lavana was the worst of them all. They said she knew when people were talking about her, even thousands of miles away, even down on Earth. They said she'd murdered her older sister, Queen Channery, so that she could take the throne from her. They said she had her own husband killed, too, so that she would be free to make a more advantageous match. They said she had forced her stepdaughter to mutilate her own face because at the sweet age of 13, she had become more beautiful than the jealous queen could stand. They said that she killed her niece, but her only threat to the throne, Prince Celine, had only been 3 years old when a fire caught in her nursery, killing her and her nanny. Some conspiracy theorists thought that the princess had survived and was still alive somewhere, waiting for the right time to reclaim her crown and end Lavana's rule of tyranny. But Cinder knew it was only desperation that fueled these rumors. After all, they'd found traces of the child's flesh in the ashes. So Cinder knows that Prince Kai could never marry Queen Lavana because Lavana would just come down here and do the same thing she's doing in Lunar to everybody else. She would just take everything over.
Quick question. So, for her niece, but wouldn't her daughter be the next in line for the throne?
She doesn't have any children.
Who did she have mutilate her face?
It was her stepdaughter.
But so wouldn't her stepdaughter be next in line for the throne instead of her niece? I'm confused with the genealogy.
So, to my understanding, the niece is the heir to the throne because she is the direct descendant of the queen that she killed.
Oh, so the queen that was ruling, Lavanna killed her because that was her sister
Yeah.
to take over. But then that, like the whole Mufasa Simba scar thing.
Exactly. Got it. Okay. So she's technically the princess is technically the heir to the throne because her mom was supposed to be queen. So the closest thing that they had at the time was Queen Lavanna because she was her sister. So she took the throne from her sister, but her sister's daughter is technically the next person in line. That's why she burned her in her crib and set her on fire and killed her. So speculated. There's still people that believe that she's out there because they never found a body, but they did find her DNA at the scene, and they found charred bits of her flesh.
So it's like the whole lost Anastasia sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's a very far-fetched theory that she would just be out there somewhere. Mm-hmm. But that's the rumor. And people are just saying that because they're scared, and they've put, kind of like an ambassador for Lunar in the palace ever since the Emperor got sick. Oh, so I think... Lettumosis. It was right before he got sick, they sent down an ambassador, and the ambassador has been staying there with them. And she is on the queen's, royal, what are they called? Her royal people.
Why?
Her royal court. So they don't know why.
Okay.
They usually don't have any lunars.
Okay.
On Earth at all.
So this isn't normal.
It's not normal. At all. So that's why everybody's freaking out, and that's why everyone's coming up with these rumors.
Royal cabinet?
Because they're scared. Yeah, her royal cabinet.
That's a word, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she sent down, her assistant, or I think it might be one of her relatives, her cousin or something, but it's somebody that's loyal to her that is in the castle as, her consult. So they've been trying... Yeah, they've been trying to make peace with the Lunars for years, and they haven't been able to make peace with the Lunars at all. They will not sign a peace treaty. They basically have outrageous demands, and she wants to come here and rule. So she wanted to marry the Emperor, but the Emperor always disapproved, and now he's dying, coincidentally, and... Now, she's brought this other person down here to discuss her terms. And she, I think, is setting her sights on Emperor Kai. And that's everybody's assumption because of why she's there. Mm-hmm. So everybody's scared that she's going to try and take over Earth as well as Lunar. So everyone's freaking out.
Because you said that New Beijing is a power,
it's the superpower. Yeah. It's the superpower of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be her first step for world domination.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So her first step to world domination is just getting her foot in the door and coming down to Earth and having a position of power. So, but they won't give it to her. They've been very adamant. The Emperor has not foreseen any of her advances.
He's about to die.
Yeah. He is about to die. He's very close to death right now. Yeah.
He's the only thing standing between Earth being dominated by her.
Well, Prince Kai is still in the way. Prince Kai
is a child.
He's 17 and a half, okay?
He's a child.
He's 17 and a half and ready to look for his bride, okay? That's what all the reports are saying, okay? So...
He is single and ready to mingle.
Yeah. So they're looking around in the junkyard, and Aiko spots a hover. And so Cinder runs over there, and she finds it. She scans it with her retinal computer, and she scans it, and she sees a mag belt, the thing that she was looking for inside.
Yay!
So she goes up there, and she's, undoing it, and she finally, notches it off, and the mag belt falls to the ground. She picks it up, And then she spots something else. And it's another hover, she thinks. So she goes over to it, and she's like, I've never seen any model like this before. She goes closer to it, and it's a second generation car. So it's like one of our cars. It's a gasoline car. She's like, it runs on gasoline. She was like, and she, you know, being a cyborg, she has like all the stuff in her brain already. So she's like, I think I could operate it. I think I could drive it. And she gets really excited. She's like, this could be our way out. And then Peony, she's like, I would never get in that thing. And they open the door and like a rat scurries out and Peony starts screaming. She's like, it's disgusting. I don't want to be anywhere near it. And she's like, well, if we cleaned it up, it could probably get us all the way to Europe. Because she wants to escape Audrey. And so she's like,
isn't there an ocean though?
Right? Not between China and Europe. Right? I don't know geography. Should we look this up?
Can I look up a map?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
We're taking a brief recess to look up geography. See, I can't even calculate anything because it's not possible. I like how this is walking, though. It will take how many days?
It's possible.
It would take 3,260 hours to walk to Germany.
It would be tough. It would be hard.
It said it would take 136 days to walk from. So, I mean, they definitely can't walk there, but.
She's got
I have my
hopes.
doubts.
She's got high hopes.
She doesn't have high hopes about going to the ball, but she has high hopes that a gasoline car will take her from China to Europe.
Hey, I believe in her. I believe. Maybe she's just using the car as a starting point to get away. Maybe she's using it to get so far away that. Because I don't think other countries feel the same way about cyborgs that they do in New Beijing.
But then,
It's more of a cultural thing.
isn't it also a reflection, though, of the emperor? Because cyborgs are treated like shit. Only in New Beijing?
I mean, that's pretty valid. But they paint him out to be a pretty good guy.
But can he be... Okay, sorry. I mean, I know that it's just a fantasy book. But can he be that great?
I had the same thoughts. So, I don't know. But I'm going to say that that's just his little, you know...
He has some red flags.
It's his little red flag. Yeah. So, Cinder is really excited about this super old car, even though Peony doesn't even want to get near it. And even Aiko, she's like...
Do you want to get near it?
No. She's like, there's probably centuries worth of rat droppings in this thing. She's like, and then she's like, okay, guys, I won't make you push it back to the house. Peony's like, great. Even though Peony was never worried that she was going to have to push anything anywhere.
She's like, I wasn't doing anything anyway.
She's like, I was never going to do that, but thanks for saying that.
But I'm glad that you agree now.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, Cinder turns to Peony, and she sees a small spot on her collarbone. And she's like, Peony, stand still. And Peony starts freaking out. She's like, what is it? Is there a bug on me? Is there something on me? She's like, Peony, stay still. She goes up to Peony, and then Peony sees a spot on her hand. And she's like, maybe it's a rash? It's a rash from the car? From the dirty car? And she tries to wipe it off, but it's not coming off. And then Cinder comes up to her, and she pulls down her shirt, and she sees the purple blotches starting to form. And Cinder can't...
Can it have been the other sister? I'm sorry. I know that's still awful, but...
And Cinder can't stop it, but all the information is going into her head. Leishmaniasis disease, blue fever, and the likelihood that she's not going to make it. And she's like, no, I can't be sick. It can't be me. I don't want to die. And Cinder can't believe it. And she starts backing away, and she starts holding her breath. She's like, get away from me. You can't be near me. She's like, what if you get it? And she's watching Peony as Peony starts...
Peony was so concerned for her.
As Peony starts bawling. And she's like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go anywhere. And Cinder Cinder wishes she could cry, but as a cyborg, she can't shed tears. And she is just so upset. And she's like, I'm going to have to call the ambulance to come get you. She's like, no, I don't want to go. And she calms the emergency to come get her. And she sees Peony just curling up in a little ball. And she's so upset. And she just can't stand it. So she goes up to Peony and she hugs her. She's like, it'll be okay. And then she thinks back to the market about Chang Sasha. And she's worried that maybe she's the one who gave the virus to Peony. She's like, maybe I have it. I'm sorry, maybe I did this to you. There was an outbreak in the market today and I didn't say anything and I'm sorry. And Peony is just crying and she just looks up at Cinder. And she's like, you have to go. You have to get out of here. They're going to take you too. You have to get away from me. Even though you could not be infected yet. You could be okay. She sees the jet coming already to come pick Peony and they stop. And Cinder she got far away. She ran away and they come up to her and they said, are you the letumosis victim? She's like, no, it's my sister. She's right over there to the left. And they said, have you had any contact with the victim within the past 12 hours? She said, yes, I have. And they pull her.
She didn't lie?
She didn't lie.
Why not?
She's so distraught, and a part of her wants to go with Peony because she doesn't want Peony to be alone. And she also feels guilty. She's worried that she gave it to Peony. So she's thinking that she's been infected this whole time and she just didn't know. So she doesn't want to infect anybody else. So they pull her blood and they run the test in the android right there in the med droid. And Cinder comes back.
She couldn't have passed it. Or she couldn't have infected.
She couldn't have infected Peony. And then she sees Peony getting lifted up into the med helicopter. And she sees her as she waves her hand to Cinder. And Cinder is totally crushed. And she's can't believe that her sister has the disease. And her brain is just playing the image over and over and over again. And she could hear Peony screaming as they picked her up. And it's just playing in her head over and over again. And she doesn't have the strength to turn it off because her brain recorded it and it's just playing in her head. And Aiko says, what do we do? And she said, I don't know. And she doesn't know how she's going to tell her stepmother and her stepsister what happened to Peony. And so she walks home and she makes it up down the stairs and she expects them to be sleeping. And she goes in and there's 3 med droids in the apartment. And she's worried that they caught the disease. But they eye her and they look at her like they're scared of her. And they don't want her to come near them. And they both have a cloth over their mouths. Mm-hmm. And then Cinder realizes that they can't be infected. If they had been infected, they already would have been gone. Mm. So they turn to Cinder and they're like, why did I get a comm an hour ago that my daughter was in the junkyard and had gotten picked up? And I was waiting for them to tell me that my ward had been picked up as well. And you failed to mention that there was an outbreak in the market today? You gave it to Peony. No, it wasn't me. They tested me and I was negative. Though it must have been a mistake. And then the android turns to her and goes to extract blood from her. And Cinder's like, I've already been tested. But you can test me again if you want. And the droid backs up. And then Audrey turns to Aiko and she said, I need you to clear out all of Peony's things. And anything she's worn in the last 24 hours, you need to throw it in the trash. And the rest of it, we'll have to sell off at the market. And she says it so robotically, like she had been thinking about it the whole time.
Already? She's not even dead yet.
Her eyes are rimmed red, and she's been crying. And Pearl, she was like balled up in the fetal position on the couch. And she looks up, and her eyes are red. And Audrey is just so mad. And she's like, I never wanted you. I never wanted you. You know that? Garrett brought you home. Garrett is her husband. So Garrett had brought her home, and Garrett had actually died from the leishmaniasis disease as well. And she blames that on Cinder as well, because Cinder, he got it right after coming back with Cinder. So she thinks wherever he went to go get Cinder in Europe, he must have brought it back with him. And she
Is the leishmaniasis disease worldwide?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. It's worldwide at this point. It started in Africa, and it's been slowly spreading all over the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And it used to be in, like, small towns, like small outskirt towns, like poor towns. Mm-hmm. It would wipe out entire villages, and it's slowly been spreading into the larger cities and affecting everyone.
Wow. And you said that she's been a cyborg since, how old was she?
She was 11.
11. And is that when Garrett, Audrey's husband, adopted her, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's when he adopted her. And Cinder has actually no memories of before.
Really?
She was 11 years old.
Okay.
She has no memory of her life before she was a cyborg.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah. She has no memories. She basically, like, woke up from the procedure, and she had prosthetic limbs, and she couldn't remember anything. So they basically, like, told her who she was and all of those things. Mm-hmm. But Audrey blames her, and she turns to Cinder, and she's like, I never wanted you. I told Garrett that I would take care of you, and I've done the best that I can, but I know that he wouldn't want you to become for our girls. Our girls come first. And then Cinder looks at her confused, and she's like, well, I have volunteered you for plague research. And Cinder's like, no, I won't go. And then the androids start closing in on her, and she has the mag belt with her still, and she starts hitting them with the mag belt and trying to get them off of her. And she knocks out one med droid, and then another one shocks her so hard that she passes out.
How does this woman expect for them to have money and be fed when she has volunteered?
So they compensate the families when they take the cyborgs.
Figures.
They compensate them. But that's the thing I don't get. Is like, yes, I'm sure you're compensated. I don't know what I was going to say. I'm sure you get compensated, but Cinder is bringing in money every day.
Right.
So it's like, how long is that money going to last them? Like, how much money is it? They never say, but I'm always curious about that. I'm like, if it's enough money for them to cart her away and she doesn't make any, they won't have any future money, like,
why wouldn't they have already done that if it was going to be enough to last them, like, a decent amount of time? You know?
Right. I don't know. But she's pissed enough.
Maybe she's, like, distraught, so
I think she is. I think she's just distraught, so she sends her away. And then, they go to the medical institute, and then there's this doctor. His name is Dr. Arlon, and he is the head researcher on the royal research team that's working on an antidote for the leishmaniasis disease. And so they go to his office, and he's in there, and he's looking at a cyborg, and he has his assistant with him. They're looking at this cyborg, and he's like, I want you to placebo him and let him go. And she's like, what do you mean, placebo him? He's only 33 years old. He's like, he's too old. She's like, what? He can't be too old. Dr. Arlan says he has a son. He has a son at home. Just placebo him and get him on his way. And then she's like, well, why are we going to placebo him? Why can't we just let him go? They have to know that we're doing something up here. And she goes, well, what are we doing up here? And she's testing the doctor because she's seen him turn away multiple patients throughout the day. And
that's a good thing, though, right? It sounds like he's saving their lives.
She doesn't think so. She's like, well, it's better that they're getting tested on cyborgs than us. So she believes.
She's another crappy human being.
And so Dr. Arlan turns away this 33-year-old man. He has like a prosthetic leg, and he could tell that this guy probably saved years to get this prosthetic leg, and he sends him on his way. And is really upset about it. But then his other assistant comes in. His assistant's name is Lee. And he's like, we have another volunteer. And Dr. Arland perks up. A volunteer? We haven't had one of those in a while. Lee goes, yeah, it's a girl. It's a teenager. And he, like, perks up. And she's like, and then his other assistant turns to him and he's like, well, you're always eager to take the females, the young girls, but you don't want to take the men. So she's trying to insinuate that he has a favoritism towards men and he just wants to take all of the female cyborgs. And she kind of, like, says, like, acts like she's going to, like, report him or something. But he just kind of waves her off and he's just like, and then he goes into the room to look at the cyborg and he's looking at her curiously. And she's asleep because she's still passed out from them.
Oh, from the med bots?
Yeah, from them electrocuting her. Mm-hmm. And he goes to examine her. And she's like, is she up to your standards? And she's like, and then he just ignores her. And he looks at the screen. He's like, get her hooked up to the med droid. And it scans them to see what percent cyborg they are. Mm-hmm. And Cinder suddenly wakes up. And he's like, hello, Sleeping Beauty. Good morning. She's like, where am I? And Cinder gets woken up for a dream. Cinder was having a dream that she was on fire. And Cinder has had this dream multiple times before where she wakes up and she's on fire. She wakes up and she's missing 2 of her limbs. But she's still dreaming. Like, she wakes up in her dream and she looks and she's missing 2 of her limbs. And she tries, and she's on an exam table and she tries to crawl away, but she can't do anything because she's basically like a stump. And this time she looks around. And normally she has this dream pretty frequently, but it's usually just her. This time she looks around and there's dozens of cyborgs that are missing limbs. And some of them in her dream. And some of them are just torsos, and they're all screaming out in pain. And Cinder is on fire. She feels like she's being incinerated. And then she wakes up, and she still feels like the burning from the dream, but it's receding. And she wakes up, and she's in a panic, and she doesn't know what's going on. And she remembers, and then she literally wakes up, and she's, like, on this, like, exam table, and she's in this, like, room, and there's, like, a glass window. She can't see anything, and it's like a mirror. So she looks up and she's staring at herself, and they've taken off all of her, I don't think she's naked, but all of her cyborg parts are exposed. So they rolled up her plant leg so they could see her leg and her arm, and she feels exposed. They wake up and she's like, thank you for volunteering. And she's like, I didn't volunteer for your plague research. You can't do this to me. And then he's like, well, I have a signature right here from a Lynn Audrey. And she's like, that's not my mother. That's my stepmother. And he's like, don't worry. We'll treat you well. And he's like explaining to her what they're going to do. So what they do is they inject the disease into the victims, and then they inject them with an antidote, and each time he tells her that each time they die a little slower each time, but each time they have not found a cure for it yet. So she is like thrashing around. She doesn't want them to do anything to her, and they're trying to plug her up to this machine to read how much of a cyborg she is, and she's thrashing around. And then she's like, maybe if I put up enough fight, they'll just knock me out again. But then she remembers her dream, and she cooperates with them, and she feels them opening her control panel in the back of her head, and she just cringes because it's like someone invading her mind. And literally. Even though she can't feel it, she hears the click of the machine plugging into her brain. And then it comes up on her interframe, and it says, you've been plugged in to the med droid. And it starts reading her, and it's like 25%, 35%, 75%, and then it goes to 100%, and then she looks up on the screen, and it's a reflected image of her, but it's like cut in half, and it's showing all of her cyborg parts, and she is actually 36% cyborg. She's 36% not human.
Is that a lot or a little?
It's a lot. So most cyborgs, I think, are below like 15%. They usually have like prosthetic limbs and stuff like that. But her mainframe, like in her brain and her like She literally has like cameras in her eyes, and she has so much tech in her. And they said that her technology would be worth thousands of dollars. That somebody put, well, they call it univs, is their unit of money. But they said that her parts, her mainframe alone will get them more money than they gave the family for the plague research.
Can you imagine if Audrey knew that? Gosh.
Yeah, literally. So, and she has cyborg parts that she didn't even know about. She even has 3 metal ribs, and she even has synthetic tissue around her heart, and she has some metal vertebrae, and she has, one of her legs has like steel plating, even where it's not cyborg parts. She has steel plating in her leg, and she's basically just like lit up. She has parts in her heart, in her brain, her ribs, her arm, her leg. She is very much cyborg. And Dr. Arlan turns to her and he says, "You're quite the scientific model there." And she turns to him and she's like, "I didn't ask for this. This is like, I don't want to be a part of your research. I'm not volunteering for your research." And then he draws up the syringe and they go in. The Medroid goes in and he tries to fish for her vein, but she's fighting him. And even though she's fighting him, he hits her vein on the first try. And he injects her with the virus.
The plague?
Yep, he injects her with the plague.
Why didn't he let Cinder go?
I don't know. She fit his profile perfectly of what he wanted.
Sounds like a creeper now.
I feel like,
I know.
I honestly thought that too when they were saying that like he only takes young females. I'm like, oh, okay, like what are you doing over there, sir?
Right.
But I think it's fairly innocent.
Okay.
Maybe.
Sounds like he has a king, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be revealed.
The way they do it is they inject it into them and then they watch it on the screen. Have a full projection of the patient and they can see the disease spreading through their body. So they're watching on the machine as the disease spreads through Cinder's body. And then that is the end of part 1 of Cinder. So next time you guys are going to have to tune in and see what happens to Cinder. She just got injected. And Peony. Yeah,
That's so
Peony
sad.
is in the quarantines.
what's gonna happen with the Ico now that Cinder is
I don't know.
getting plagued?
I don't know. But Cinder had just got injected with the plague. And so far, not one person has ever survived.
Also, I didn't like how they're like, oh, well, each time it doesn't kill you as fast, but it's like, okay, but if everybody's still dying, that sounds like it's still pretty gruesome.
I know, I feel like they were trying to comfort her, like, oh, don't worry, like, you'll die slower, maybe you won't die at all. It's like, oh,
You're gonna be in pain longer before you die.
yeah, it's like, you're gonna suffer for a little bit longer than everyone else, but you'll probably still die, but we're getting there.
One step at a time.
But we're getting there, okay? But that's the end of this part. So you guys are going to have to tune in next time to see what happens to Cinder. Because she just got injected with the leishmaniasis disease. And what also happens to Peony in the quarantines. And I don't know what's going to happen with the android either. Because she still has to fix the prince's android. Which I guess is kind of on the back burner for now. But we'll see what happens.
Well, we don't even know if she's gonna live the next week, so I think that the android deadline's a little bit less priority right now.
Yeah. But we'll have to see what happens next time. So see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Like and
Bye.
subscribe.
Oh, yeah. Like and subscribe if you like today's episode and so you can keep track of the next one.
And if you're listening to us on Spotify, then give us a follow. And all